You just don't get it because you don't use your head. You never seem to grow up, do you? I've been oppressed by my mother-in-law at every turn. But I've made a decision. Quietly yet surely, I'll have my perfect revenge. Why do I have to put up with such unreasonable things? As I prepared a dinner for my mother-in-law that she probably wouldn't eat, I sighed deeply for what felt like the 100th time. My name is Pamela. I just turned 35 yesterday. It was the second birthday in a row where no one celebrated with me. Forgotten by not only my in-laws but also my husband, I had no choice but to celebrate myself. Alone in the bath, I looked at my reflection in the mirror and said, "Happy birthday." How heartbreaking that was. Probably something no one else could understand. The more I thought about it, the more miserable I felt. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. Every day, every hour, I whispered this to myself, reminiscing about the past. Before marrying Timothy, I never imagined I'd have to live with my in-laws. I dreamed of enjoying married life just with Timothy, cooking delicious meals for him every day, keeping the house sparkling for him. And once we had a family, I wanted to go on picnics on weekends. I had so many happy plans. Even if not all were possible, I wanted to create a home as close to my ideal as possible. Then suddenly, everything changed. Timothy's sister, Lisa, who had been living with her parents, was assigned overseas. Following that, her work-focused, career-minded brother-in-law, Anthony and Timothy were called to the family home. For some reason, I was left out. I was shocked by what Timothy said when he returned. "We're moving to my parents' house before Lisa goes to France." What? Wait a minute, what do you mean? I asked in a panic, unable to comprehend his words. It's not hard to understand. Mom's on blood pressure medication, right? There's a risk she could collapse suddenly. We are worried, so we need to move quickly, that's it. Timothy said dismissively, heading straight for the shower. I felt a deep anger hearing his carefree humming through the bathroom door. It was absolutely wrong for him to decide something so important on his own. Hadn't we sworn just 2 weeks ago to support each other? We're not alone anymore. Let's build our home together. Those were the words Timothy himself had said, taking my hand on our wedding day. I couldn't let this life-changing event go unchallenged. After Timothy finished his shower, I approached him. "Hey, Timothy." I called his name as gently as I could, and he turned around in a good mood. "What is it?" "About the move you mentioned earlier." "Yeah, we don't have much time, so please get the paperwork done soon." "No time? How soon are we talking?" Feeling my heart rate increase with anxiety, I clutched my chest. 3 weeks. What? How could he say such a thing so casually? Does Timothy have any idea how long a move usually takes? "Timothy, do you realize there's a contract for the house?" "I don't know. That's why I'm leaving it to you." "You're leaving it all up to me? There's nothing else I can say. I've got work, so please take care of it." "How could you?" I was stunned as Timothy smiled vaguely and shrugged. Not only did he decide something so important on his own, but he also had the audacity to dump everything on me. "What does Anthony say?" "Anthony lives with his wife's family, who are wealthy. It's impossible for him to live with us, so who else but me?" "Are you even considering our life together, Timothy? I can't just accept this all of a sudden." "So what then? Are you saying it doesn't matter what happens as long as we're happy? That being married means we shouldn't worry about our parents or abandon them?" "I didn't go that far. You might as well have. You can say such cold things because they're not your parents." Timothy, pressing me with such pressure, was not receptive to my feelings. Alright, I'll prepare. When I said that, Timothy turned his back on me and turned on the TV. I glared resentfully at the back of Timothy, who seemed satisfied with having overpowered me. I was really busy after that. Canceling the house contract was a hassle, and it cost me in penalties. We are supposed to give a month's notice for cancellation. Despite telling him that, can't be helped. Timothy just dismissed it. Originally, I was renting the apartment we were living in until we found a new place. I was the one on the contract. The rent was withdrawn from an account in my name, so it would be me who would have to pay the penalty for early termination. I couldn't believe how Timothy nonchalantly accepted this as if it were inevitable. No matter what I said, Timothy would turn it around and make me out to be the bad guy. He justified himself, believing anything else to be wrong, making it impossible to reason with him. I really wanted Timothy to reconsider living with his parents. I wished he would prioritize our newlywed life, but my wish remained unfulfilled. And we eventually moved. I had hoped that, moving in as a replacement for Lisa, we would be warmly welcomed. Even though we were newlyweds, I naively expected gratitude for living with them. But I was wrong, and I realized in that day. First things first. Jessica, my mother-in-law, called me to the living room and started. Don't get any ideas just because you're living with us now. You're not changing your status. Lisa is number 1, Anthony is second, and you guys are third. Don't even think for a second that living with us makes you important. I understand. Trying to suppress my frustration, I replied with a trembling voice. You may not know much since you're newly married, but you are my son's wife, not my daughter, remember that. Oh, it felt like being hit in the head with a hammer. I was so shocked I couldn't find the words. Make sure you live without making any blunders, understanding your place well. With that, Jessica went back to her room. As for me, I sat there, unable to move, not fully grasping the meaning of her words. From then on, my life became a series of hardships. No, a series of days filled with constant worries. The way you wash dishes is wrong, isn't it? They seem to smell fishy. Even though my mashed potatoes turned out delicious, she grimaced and dumped them in the sink. Ostentatiously, Jessica reapplied detergent to the sponge, scrubbed vigorously, rinsed, and then refilled the dish with mashed potatoes herself. What's with this meatloaf gravy? The amount of salt is all wrong. You've ruined the sauce. Do you even know how to make gravy properly? Muttering, "It's too spicy," Jessica spitefully drank cup after cup of coffee. Pamela, your long hair sheds too much. It's unpleasant. Use the shower last. When I finally entered the shower room last, it was in such a state that I couldn't even think of using it. Don't you know how to clean, or do you want me to vacuum the dust? Despite never lifting a finger herself, she followed me around, constantly criticizing my cleaning. Please wash your laundry separately from ours. I was at a loss, treated like a moody teenager, believing that someday Timothy would stand up for me, yet I kept enduring. But Jessica never revealed her true self in front of Timothy. Of course, Timothy had no clue what I was going through. I tried revealing Jessica's misdeeds a few times, seeking help, but Timothy responded skeptically. Did Mom really say that? I couldn't make this up. But he simply wouldn't believe me. Rather, maybe you're just fed up with living together and making things up. Don't paint Mom as the villain. Timothy glanced at me with utter disdain. No matter how much I despised Jessica, she was still Timothy's mother. I wasn't fabricating stories to trap her. I thought Timothy would believe me. I wanted to believe I was still loved. But just handle things without causing trouble. It's me who suffers if anything goes wrong. His response was the exact opposite of what I hoped for. That's when I realized, for anyone, their parents are absolute. Their sense of normalcy is rooted in what their parents taught them. What their parents say is always right, and what others say is out of the norm. My sense of normalcy was not the same as Timothy's. Realizing this, I despaired completely. Mark, my father-in-law, was completely dominated by Jessica and would quickly avert his eyes when they met mine. That meant, in this house, I had no allies. I could hear the sound of my heart breaking, and I gave up everything. Then, the conversations with Timothy decreased. He started coming home late under the pretext of work, and even began going on business trips. You've never had business trips before. What's going on? When I asked anxiously, he snapped, "It's natural with more clients. Don't interfere with your husband's work." Eventually, I transformed into a mere housekeeper living in this house, no longer Timothy's wife, nor the wife of the son of this house. As I showed less emotion, Jessica's attacks became more severe. Tiring of berating me alone, she started ridiculing me in front of the neighbors. "My daughter-in-law is really clueless. I have to teach her everything from scratch, or else I can't even introduce her to anyone. Just hope she doesn't embarrass Timothy. I wonder why he didn't marry someone more competent. Poor Timothy." She would tell the neighbors, igniting the typical mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflict gossip. "Jessica, I don't know what to do anymore." Even as I appealed in tears, "You don't understand because you don't use your head. You never seem to grow up." She would say that without offering any solution. Day by day, I grew more bitter, and Timothy continued to pretend not to notice for 2 years. Despite enduring such pain for so long, here I am, still preparing Jessica's meals. Is this what my life should be? At 35, I found myself pondering this. Until now, I've always thought I hated this life. I wanted to escape, to be saved. Such conservative thoughts, but maybe turning 35 makes you think differently. I have to change myself. I must carve my own path. Once that thought took hold, I couldn't continue living a life of oppression. "Timothy, please, let's leave this house together." That night, when Timothy returned late from work, I asked him without preamble, "What are you talking about all of a sudden? You can't just do whatever you want." He sighed deeply, showing no sign of taking me seriously. "I'm really at my limit, understand that." "You always do this, always focusing on the negatives, never seeing the positives. That's why you talk about being at your limit so easily." Easy? He never even tried to understand what I'd endured for 2 years. "You're the one who's saying it's easy." Timothy seemed taken aback that I fought back. "What the? That's not like you, Pamela." His attempt to soothe me, patting my back while I was visibly angry. "I'll say it again. I'm at my limit in every way. I can't live here anymore. I don't want to live oppressed." All right. I'll protect you from now on." It was clear he was just trying to smooth things over. I wasn't going to let it end ambiguously. "Timothy, listen, okay? I said I've reached my limit, didn't I?" As I closed the physical distance between us, I told Timothy all the reasons for my limit. The next morning, fortunately, Timothy had a day off, so we called his parents. "Mom, Dad, we've decided to leave this house," Timothy told his parents. "What are you saying all of a sudden? You can't just decide something like that. Jessica vehemently opposed. Upset about losing both her stress relief target and housekeeper. That's only natural. It's sad and worrying to not be able to be near you, Mom, but I want to make it with Pamela. It's because of Pamela, isn't it? That's why you're saying this all of a sudden. No, it's not like that. As Timothy started to falter, I interjected. Timothy, did I say something wrong? Frowning sadly, I spoke, and Timothy hurriedly placed his hand on my back. No, Mom, it's me. I, as a husband, want to be with Pamela. No matter what Timothy said, Jessica would not be convinced. However, we stood our ground, and a month later we successfully moved out. On the moving day, in front of everyone, I said to Jessica, I will never forget what you've done to me, Jessica. This is a declaration of estrangement. I wouldn't return here ever again. It was a declaration born from such resolve. As for us afterward, despite Timothy having neglected me for so long, he started to overly fuss over me. I started working and suddenly everything was reversed. It has been 3 years since we left that house. Initially, we were inundated with calls every day. I made sure Timothy promised not to divulge our new address, and it seems he's kept that promise. Well, that's only to be expected. Timothy was constantly harassed on the phone with demands to come back, bring Pamela back, but they eventually gave up. Now, it seems he only keeps in touch with them. Maybe that's why. I might have been too complacent. Dad and Mom contacted me. Timothy timidly informed me of the rare communication from his parents. Is that so? I responded monosyllabically while taking off my jacket, just returned from work. You know about Mom's car accident, right? I don't know. Did I hear such a story? I told you, remember it, it's important. Timothy raised his voice, and I glared back, making him choke on his words. Apparently, she is left with severe after effects. She has been diagnosed with left side paralysis and needs care. Oh. And they want us to come back and help. Why? It's hard alone. They need a caregiver. I want to do my filial duty. Timothy's words were impassioned, almost suffocating to listen to. She raised me. She's important. I want to support her. Be there for her, please. I couldn't bear to hear any more, so I suggested we visit his parents' house for the weekend. Jessica, who kept mistreating me, is now a care recipient seeking help. How will Jessica, who hasn't seen me in 3 years since I declared estrangement, greet me? How will I face her? What should I say? While I was pondering all this, the weekend arrived quickly. I found myself standing in front of the house I swore never to return to. Dad, Mom, I'm home. Timothy left me behind and quickly entered the house. I followed reluctantly, but the house felt different. The corridor, once polished to a shine, was now slightly dusty. As I stepped into the living room, my eyes met Jessica's, seated on a large armchair. You finally came, Pamela. I've contacted you so many times. How heartless to not visit even when your parents are in such a state. Jessica, whom I hadn't interacted with for 3 years, greeted me with abuse. You have no idea how hard it's been for me, how much I've suffered. She seems to think I've come to seek forgiveness, her choice of words as domineering as ever. And as usual, Timothy and Mark do nothing to defend me. Well, it's fine. I'll forgive you. Forget the past and come back. I'll teach you once again what it means to be a son's wife. Today, I realized, Jessica not only wants me to care for her, but also to take on all the household responsibilities. And judging by the reaction, Timothy knew too. "You can't refuse. You're the wife of this house's son. If you even think about refusing, I'll make you divorce Timothy and leave immediately." Jessica's final words made me feel a sense of clarity. "Oh dear, you finally said it." I took an envelope from my bag and handed it to Jessica. "What's this?" "This is a divorce application form, already signed. I'll grant Jessica's wish and divorce you." "What did you say?" Surprised by my words, Jessica snatched the envelope away, but I grabbed it back, slipped it into my bag, and stood up with a defiant smile. "I'm going to file this now." "Wait, don't do that. Mom, how could you say such things to Pamela?" Timothy tried to cling to me in panic, but I forcefully pushed him away. "By the way, the apartment we're living in now is mine. I bought it and have been paying the mortgage. It's in my name. So I'm giving it back to you, Timothy. You said you were worried about Jessica and wanted to take care of her, to be a good son, so I'm sure you'll do just fine." I repeated Timothy's words from that day. And, by the way, he is currently unemployed and penniless. "What do you mean?" As Jessica's face turned pale, I smiled at her. "Back when we were living here, Timothy was cheating on me, hiding in the shadows. I was so shattered at that time that I couldn't do much, but I agreed to overlook the affair and social repercussions on the condition that he leaves the house with me. At first, we lived in a small apartment, but once I got a job, I quickly rose through the ranks, easily surpassing Timothy's salary. That led to his depression, and he eventually quit his job." "How could you do such things that drove Timothy to the edge?" "I don't know. He drove himself to ruin. He was truly worthless. Maybe it was the way he was raised." "How dare you say such things? You're the worst daughter-in-law." "I don't want to be called the worst by you. To me, you all are the lowest." "The three of you have a good time together. I'm going back to being a stranger." "Wait, Pamela, don't leave me." Timothy clung to my feet, and I looked down on him with contempt. "I won't thank you for anything. You and your family will be a shameful experience in my life. I filed the divorce papers right after leaving the in-laws' house. I am now free from everything." I later heard that, unsurprisingly, Timothy couldn't manage the caregiving, and without any income, he couldn't afford a care home. His siblings stayed away from the family home, the neighbors shunned them, and they were forced into a lonely and miserable existence. I made the right decision to divorce at that time. Clicking my heels, I started walking towards a new life.